If you live in an area heavily visited by tourists, what is the dumbest thing you've seen tourists do? Worked at a historic hotel that was located within provincial parkland, so fairly remote and surrounded by wildlife. One day a guest came in to complain that one of our pet foxes had bit her child when the kid tried to feed it by hand. Our manager had a hard time remaining courteous as he explained we do not have pet foxes and that we are not responsible for the actions of local wildlife. We also have a very popular fictional character who is based in our region. The number of tourists who don't realize the character is fictional is astounding, and many grown men and women have cried when they come to see this character's home, only to find out the character never existed. Also, we have never claimed that this character is real. I'm not sure where they get this idea from. Live in and grew up in San Antonio. My mother worked downtown for much of my childhood, so I've spent a lot of my life within shouting distance of the Alamo. I cannot count the number of times I've had people ask me where it is and not believe me when I tell them just walk in a straight line and you'll get there. It's like half a block that away. I've had people ask me where it is while I was standing in Alamo Plaza, literally in front of the damn thing. They expect a movie set rather than remain smack in the middle of town. A not insignificant number of people also will just stroll out into Alamo Street, seemingly not noticing the traffic. My best friend told me he had someone walk into the side of his car one time while he was stopped at a traffic lights on Alamo, and I can believe it. People do not pack their damn brains. I live in D.C. My dad was a police officer who unfortunately passed from leukemia just over 10 years ago. Officer funerals are a pretty big deal for the department. Typically, the funeral service packed the church to the brim with friends, family, and a few officers. At the conclusion of the service, the honor guard picked up the casket and carried it down the front steps of the church. I, my brother, and my mother followed behind. The honor guard stopped on the first landing of the steps of the church. What does bawling 9-year-old me see? A family of tourists snapping pictures of the stream of honor guard and people walking out of the church. Some people have no class. Let's see, so many dumb tourists to pick from. A woman put her child on the back of an alligator so she could take a picture. She thought it was fake. Why she didn't get chomped, I'll never know. A tourist decided he needed closer pictures of the buffalo, so he kept walking up to them, despite how obviously pissed off they were. Again, not sure why he's still alive. At the beach, this fat little butterball parked his car and ran full out from his car to the water and then swam to the sandbar. Well, he tried anyways. He ran out of steam before he reached the sandbar. Thanks to my dad, he didn't drown. And my personal favorite, the guy that was wading through hipped-up swamp water to take photos of the baby gators. If you don't know why that's a bad idea, please don't come to Florida. I grew up in Las Vegas and had a cousin visit with some of his friends from a small town. A girl in his party kept leaving her phone on the bar table in a lounge off the strip while dancing with her friends. I grabbed it and returned it to her and said, "You can't do this here." A little while goes by and she does it again, and my cousin scooped it up and put it in his pocket. She returned after a bit and started stressing when she realized it was gone, and he quickly returned it. He almost warned her that she has to be careful with her stuff and offered to hold it for her, but she declined. Fast forward another hour, I see her freaking out from across the dance floor. When I get there, she is making a scene because her phone is now legitimately gone and proceeded to flip the table. Security wasn't having it and we all got the boot, and she flew home the next day without it. I went to school at the University of Oxford in the UK. It is an incredibly popular tourist destination as well as a functioning university. Tourists have shown up in my department and asked for a tour. If you are wearing your student robes, which is relatively common, many will take your picture without your permission. I've had people try to follow me into libraries because they assumed if I was allowed in, So were they. The most bizarre story I've heard was when a friend of mine woke up from a nap to find a lady in her room taking pictures. She was a tourist who ignored the private signs and wandered around trying to find unlocked doors. Visiting family in London. I was a tourist too, from the US, and my mom wanted to go to Harrods. We got an early start that morning and we were at the door before the place opened. A few other people were there too, waiting for the doors to unlock. A woman comes up to the small group of us with a wheelie suitcase and begins to yell, slowly, in an American accent, "I am lost. Can you please tell me where my hotel is? Can anyone understand me?" The entire group of us had the collective thought to act like we couldn't understand her. Nay, act like she wasn't even there. She yelled a bit more but then eventually wandered off, presumably to find someone who could speak English. In Acadia National Park, there's a rocky inlet that eroded away to form what is called the Thunder Hole. Here's a link to video. Basically, waves go into it and splash out while making a loud noise. As attractions go, it kind of sucks, but that's not important to this story. I'm going to fast forward that video for you so that you can see that there's a rocky platform on the opposite side of the staircase. Here's the link. Notice how it's awash with rough seas. That's high tide. I found another video that has a shot of what that same platform looks like at low tide. I'll FF that as well. The platform is behind, left of the woman. No relation to me, just some random nice person. Here's that link. As you can see, the platform is exposed at just above the water level, but even though the sea looks relatively calm compared to the first video, the waves are often just as violent even on nice days. And as you can also see, that platform is covered in slippery slimy seaweed. At least where it's not covered with sharp barnacles. Sorry for the long setup, but you had to understand the topography, oceanography. Anyway, the one day that we were here, this entitled parent decided that she needed pictures of her 3 kids out there on those rocks. This was one of the days where the waves were particularly rough, and the tide was coming in. But despite dozens of other tourists yelling at the woman to get her kids off of there, she let them wander around and play. One of them even managed to get to the smaller rock just off the edge of the large platform. About where the nice ladies left here is if you freeze that video at 3 minutes 25 seconds. This whole time, the tide is coming in, and the wind is picking up, and the waves are getting higher and higher, even washing over the kids' feet, and all this woman is doing is yelling back, "I just want to get some fucking pictures." It's none of your fucking business, as her kids are inches from being swept out to sea and dying. Let's not make any mistakes here. Nobody was going to jump into heavy surf in 50 water with no safe place to haul the kids to even if they could save them. I have no idea what moved me to do it. I'm normally a fairly quiet guy, but when a full wave finally broke over the platform and soaked the kids' feet, I had had enough. I used my best command voice and yelled, "No, Bella, get those fucking kids off that fucking rock or so help me God. I will have your ass thrown in gaol." That day, I was wearing green cargo shorts, a short-sleeved khaki expedition-style shirt with epaulets and 2 breast pockets and a wide-brimmed camping hat, like Aussie wear in the outback, sort of. I guess the almost ranger costume and my indignant dad voice must have done the trick. The woman rounded up her kids, handed them up to the walkway, yelled something like sorry at me, and then scurried away up the stairs. And to risk being called a liar and relegated to R, that happened, all the people actually did clap. I thought that never happened in real life, but it did that one time. Fucking just stuck my arm in my wife's blood pressure cuff. Just thinking about that moron almost losing 1 or more kids to an angry sea nearly doubled my blood pressure. Literally just today someone drove their truck into the river, driving way too fast, and or distracted, on curvy roads driving into the deepest river canyon in America. Definitely a lot of confused people who don't realize the road they are on will dead end and does not go through the mountains. Not many roads cross the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. Similarly confused people who didn't realize not everywhere had phone service, stopping in the middle of the road for photos, not obeying child safety restraint laws because a national park is like Disney to them. Yeah, sorry, buckle your kid up, you are still on a highway. Rocks fall, idiots drive into the river. You are not immune from a car accident on vacation, plus no phone service. Remember, cops and EMS take minimum 1 hour, usually closer to 2. I actually really love my job and work in tourism seasonally, so I see this all summer, but sometimes it does drive me crazy. I just want people to have a nice time and get home safely, while leaving our protected lands clean. I don't live in an area heavily visited by tourists, but I love to travel, so I end up in many of these places. The stupidest thing I can think of was a lady posing for a photo in front of the Hiroshima Dome, which was right under the bomb blast and ended up somehow not getting completely destroyed. It now stands in a memorial park as a reminder of the horrors that those bombs unleashed. So there I was, walking around the park, reading one depressing sign after another. There is a museum there too, which gets even more depressing. By the time I got to the dome I was filled with emotion. Then this couple walks up to the dome, and the lady starts posing in front of the dome and smiling. Posing like he would for an Instagram selfie on a beach or something. It made me sick to my stomach. I was going to say something, but I had no idea what. Instead I just walked away before my emotions could get the better of me. This couple was probably not Japanese, or at least definitely not ethnically Japanese, so they were most probably tourists, not sure where from. Could have been anywhere from Europe, North America, or even Africa. They must have been in their 40s or 50s, and like, how do you not know what happened at Hiroshima? Why would you want a photo like that? It upset me. Walking more through the park and taking in more of the somber atmosphere filled me with even more emotion. I think it stayed with me for a couple days. I've probably seen stupider things from tourists, but this one I will never forget. I've lived in a few different tourist towns. After reading the posts below, I'm surprised I haven't seen this yet. Tourists piss and puke everywhere. In people's yards, on the street, in the park, on the sides of stores. It doesn't matter, and I'm not talking about New Orleans. I'm talking about smaller towns with bike trails or historic sites that draw tourists. Also, my old lady pet peeve is tourists who park their vehicles blocking my driveway. I have so wanted to knife so many tires on so many cars and RVs, but I know that would just mean that their car would be there longer. So I've never done it yet. It's like when tourists go to a touristic destination, they don't understand that people live there and lead actual normal lives. And here's a specific thing I can't forget. I once worked at a small but very good art museum. We had just spent several days installing a new traveling exhibit of very fragile ancient and important glass and ceramic artifacts into vitrines. I mean, everything is bubble wrapped and methods of handling materials are reviewed and special carts are used, and everything was handled with such care and concern. Then at the grand opening I saw one very well-dressed lady just plunk her purse, bright green, and probably some designer shit, down right on top of the vitrine containing the most ancient, valuable artifact in the exhibit. And people always put dirty cups full of liquid and napkins and plates full of food down on top of the vitrines. They're far more concerned about being seen at an event at the museum than they are interested in looking at the artifacts or learning anything. I grew up in a beach town. On one occasion I was chilling on the beach and this couple next to me was getting smashed. They had a 3-4-year-old, so while they were getting blackout drunk their child was playing in the water unsupervised. She had a floaty vest, but that was it. The current started taking this child out to sea. I had to go out and get her. As an Australian, I see people do the dumbest shit with animals. For example, there was a tiger snake, which does not look even close to harmless, sitting along a riverbank, and all the locals were eyeing it off and walking around it, but a group of people walked right up to take a photo. I'm assuming because they had heard all about the snakes in Australia. They were within 1 meter of the snake, which was clearly pissed before somebody yelled at them to get the fuck back. Another thing that is more excusable and funny than walking up to a snake is tourists going on hikes or bushwalks and not putting insect spray on. Scrolling through these comments, I see stories of people walking up to bears and trying to ride bison, neither of which we have in Australia, but no Australian I know would even attempt to do either of them. I find it odd because humans would not naturally approach an animal such as a bear and expect it to pose for a photo. So I have no idea what is up with tourists sometimes. Oh, I got another one. I was in Norway, about to get on a popular train ride that goes through the mountains with steep angles and tight turns. When you buy a ticket for this ride, you don't get an assigned seat and can sit wherever you want. So I did, got on, sat down in the first best seat I saw, and not a minute later a large Chinese group came on and their tour guide yelled at me, "Chinese only." I was like, geez. Calm down, lady. The thing is that you could hear this group approaching. They were effing loud, so I did not mind at all to get on a different car, far away from them. The makeup of this group was almost exclusively older women, let's say in their 40s, 60s or something like that. So I stand up to walk to the next car over, and these fucking assholes are pushing and shoving, trying to get the best seat or whatever. It was chaotic, the exact opposite of what I'd experienced in Norway up until that point. It's usually quiet and civilized, and you get tons of personal space, but nope, this group was yelling, pushing, shoving, and I'm just like, I just want to get to the next car. This was the last car on the train, so I was forced to go in one direction only. And eventually I got kind of annoyed. The tour guide could have been a lot nicer about everything, and I'm pretty damn sure I could have stayed if I wanted to, and all the shoving and pushing just pushed me over the edge. I just started walking forwards, sending old Chinese ladies to the left and right as I did so. I don't think anybody fell, but I was just like, you want to push and shove? Let's do this. I had my hands out in front of me like a battering ram and parted the seas, so to speak, in a similar fashion that an icebreaker might. That felt incredibly satisfying. When I got to the other car, I half expected somebody to chase after me to yell at me some more or whatever. But apparently what I did was perfectly normal to them. The rest of the ride was very enjoyable and quiet. I work at an aquarium near the beach. One day a couple came in holding a cup and explained to me that they had found a crab on the beach. They were concerned that he was in distress and were not sure how to best take care of it, so they brought it to me. I look at the cup and see a very dead hermit crab. Basically they kidnapped a crab from his home, drowned him in a cup full of Ozarka bottled water, and gave him to me to throw away. I worked at a historic site for the War of 1812. We kept the logbook in the staff room of all the stupid things we heard tourists say. The most memorable was a man who at the start of the tour pointed across the bay and said, "That's the United States over there. It's literally the other end of town. We are many hours away from any border." A woman smacked her kid really hard once and said, "Don't touch the rocks, they're really old." I mean, she's not wrong, but it's rocks. I lived in a tourist city in the US Southeast and I never understood how people could travel so far to get there and not check unexpected weather ahead of time. It'd be 8100 plus degrees Fahrenheit from like March to October, and people would complain that they only packed long sleeves because it's autumn/spring/I thought it would be hot like when it's hot at home in not very hot place, not 20 degrees hotter. Like you spent thousands just to get here and you couldn't Google average temperature, city, May.